now that we've learned what attributes are and how to use them, we can add the overhead. So far we have just had the content of the web page, which is not a complete web page. There's a lot of overhead that needs to go on it. The content is what will show up in the web page, but the overhead has a lot of information for the browser. So I'm going to do the overhead in a separate file so we can see what it consists of, and then we'll add the overhead to the web page that we're working on. The first thing that comes in overhead is the doc type. And the doc type tells the browser which version of HTML we are using. We're going to be using HTML5, which is the easiest doc type. It's just HTML. Then comes the HTML tag, the opening tag, and the closing tag. Notice how I'm not getting any help from my editor. And that's because it doesn't know what type of file it is. So as soon as I save it and give it an extension, it'll know what language I'm speaking. So I'm going to call this overhead h.html. And as soon as that extension is there, it says, oh, I know what you're talking HTML. And so now the editor will help me. So all the rest of the HTML goes inside these opening and closing HTML tags. The only thing that's outside of it is the doc type. And inside the HTML tag, there are two sections. There's the head section, and then following the head section is the body section. Okay, and in the body goes everything, the content that will show up so in the web page, right? Okay, so the content that will show up in the web page is what goes in the body. And then in the head section is really information about the web page. And mostly it's for information for the browser and for other tools that use it. So notice that none of these have attributes, except in the HTML, we need to put one attribute. And that is the language attribute, L-A-N-G, and it will specify the language of the document. We're going to be speaking English, and specifically US English. So the way that we say that, they're very specific values for the language attributes, and this is how you say US language, US English. All right, then inside the head, the first thing that we're going to put is a meta tag. And now my editor says, oh, you want the character set meta tag attribute in here, which in fact is what I do want in this particular meta tag. So I want that character set specific as UTF-8. And so you see that character set there. The next thing I'm going to put is the title attribute. Not attribute, sorry, I was thinking about clarifying the title element. So notice how this has opening and closing title tags. This is an actual HTML element. Remember that we've used title attributes in our document. And that right here where we have an A tag with a title attribute, which is different than what this is, which is the title element that has an opening and closing tag. So keep track of that. They're both titles, but one is an element, that's this one, and one is an attribute, and that's that one. All right, so there's our title, and I'm not going to put anything here because this changes with every single web page. So I'm going to put 3 asterisks as an indication that this will change for each web page that we use this in. Then after the title, we're going to put another meta tag. We're not going to do the character set again. We only need to do that once. Now I'm going to do over 4 different meta tags. The first one, and each one I'm going to specify by the name attribute. The first one I'm going to do is the description. And so I specify this is the description meta tag. It's going to talk about this description. And then I'm going to put the content attribute. And inside here, I'm going to put a brief description of the web page. And this is going to vary depending on each page, because it's going to be a description about the specific page. So I'm going to put 3 asterisks there. The next meta tag this one is going to be the keywords meta tag, and the content of this is going to be a series of keywords. So there's going to be a keyword, then another keyword, and they're separated by commas. And I'm going to put an asterisk here. You won't actually use the word keyword. That's just clues to let you know that they're keywords separated by commas. But that will also change with each web page. You'll put keywords specifically related to the web page that you're creating. Then the next one is the author. And on this one for the content, you actually put your name. So I'm going to put my name, Linda Dew Hadway, and you put your name. I'm not going to put asterisks here because every time I create a web page, it's going to have my name as the author. Every time you create a web page, it will have your name as the author. And then the last one we're going to do is the viewport. And the viewport, the content for that is preset, and I'm going to copy paste it. And I suggest you do the same, and it won't change. Now, the viewport helps with responsive design. It also helps with the web page being able to be aware of the size of the device that you're using and work within the viewport of that specific device. So just include this one exactly the way it is. And again, no asterisks, it won't change. So there I've specified all of the tags that we're going to need for the overhead. I suggest you create a file that has this consistent overhead that you can use to copy paste on every single file that you do. Now let's go see how this will work in the web page that we've started. Everything that we have so far is the content. It's the part that we want to show up on the web page, right? And if you remember, everything that's supposed to go on the web page goes inside the body tags. So what we want to do is we want to take that opening body tag and everything above it and put that at the very top of this web page. And we just paste it right there at the top. And that's the opening body. That gives us all of that top overhead. And then it opens the body. And then we want all of this to be inside the body. All of it, clear to the bottom. And then we want to close the body. So then we bring the closing body tag and the closing HTML tag and put it right at the very bottom. Save that, come back to the page and refresh it. And notice it didn't make much change. It did move it down just slightly, but other than that, there's no change that's made. So the overhead doesn't visibly change the web page, but it sets it up to be well coded and defines lots of information that'll be good for the browser. Now let's go ahead and change these details that are specific to this web page. So we want to put a brief description of the web page. So this is a review of an article about effective learning strategies. Okay, so there's a description. Now notice I went over my 80 character limit, so I'm going to go up here and move this attribute down, and then it stayed within my 80 character limit. I want to change the keywords to things that apply. So there were lots of things here. We talked about learning strategies, comma, we talked about practice testing, which is also self-testing. We talked about, the page talks about distributed practice and interleaved practice. Notice that if I've written something interleaved, that my text editor helps me find it again. Interleaved practice, elaborative practice, self-exploration, self-explanation. Okay, So there are some of the keywords that we can use. Now I went over my 80 character limit. I put this down on the next line and it still stays over 80 characters. This is another exception where that opening quote is there and that closing quote is there, and it's just too long to keep on a line less than 80 characters. So this is one of those times when you let the line go longer. You don't put a carriage return, don't do a carriage return inside double quotes. So leave this line long. All right, now those have been, both the description and the keywords have been updated to match this web page. The last thing that we have is the title. Notice that we haven't made any changes to the web page by the description or the keywords, but the browser will use that, and web crawlers will use that, search engines will use that. Let's go ahead and change the title. So I'm going to put this as Learning Strategies. Okay, and I'm going to save it. Now this is in the head, which means it's not going to show up in the body of the web page. Let's see what happens. Okay, it didn't show up in the body of the web page. Where did it show up? Up here in the tab. So that's what the title attribute does. Not the title attribute, there we are mixing up. The title element, which is in the head section, whatever you put inside there will show up in the tab of the browser. So you want to set that to something that matches the web page. And that's how you add overhead to a web page.